Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Whatcha Gonna Queue. We hope that you enjoyed the first episode of Whatcha Gonna Queue of the new year. Once again, we want to remind our new and old viewers that Gone is the category of new to Netflix, replaced with Instant Karma, in which we recommend some great instant titles to watch before they expire. So now, once again, just a reminder, Whatcha Gonna Queue, which is a weekly video series in which we highlight some of the best titles that Netflix has to offer, looks a little bit something like this. Instant Karma, where we recommend some of the best instant titles to watch before they expire. What the F is This, where we highlight some of the obscure or overlooked titles buried in the annals of Netflix. And For Your Consideration, where the recommended titles tie into a timely, predetermined cinematic theme. And while we're on the topic of reminders, we'd like to remind anybody who may have forgotten that I am one of your co-hosts, Jim Rohner.
And I am one of your other co-hosts, Alex Rabinowitz.
And ladies and gentlemen, Alex said that he felt a little bit empty because he was not the first one to introduce an instant title. So now this week, Alex, why don't you kick us off for section one?
Thank you, Jim. There was a void in my heart. An underdog rises in The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters, a video game-centric documentary by Seth Gordon. Steve Wiebe is an unassuming and unemployed husband and father who becomes the unlikely challenger to the Donkey Kong World Championship when he takes on the egocentric Billy Mitchell for the title. What results is a twisting tale of competition, intrigue, dishonesty, and kill screens.
When you want your name written into history, you have to pay the price.
Sometimes, Jim, a documentary comes along that is so well crafted and tells such an interesting story that it resembles a narrative film. And this happens to be one of those cases.
Yeah, I have unfortunately not seen King of Kong yet, but everybody I know that has seen it echo your sentiments exactly in that it's fertile ground for a narrative because of just how narrative it actually is.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit about why should I get behind Steve Wiebe as a character in a film? I mean, it seems like here's a guy who didn't work at all and, you know, just started playing video games all day. It doesn't really seem like the kind of guy that you really want to get behind.
That's kind of generalizing it. He lost his job, and he's taking this up as a hobby. He's not a video game playing type. He just kind of gets a whiff of this whole world of competitive video gaming and decides, oh, maybe this could be something that I'm good at. I'd like to try this for fun. But what makes him the perfect protagonist, besides his good intentions and good nature, is that he has the quintessential antagonist to go up against.
Well, maybe they'd like it if I lose. I gotta try losing sometime.
One thing that alienates people from documentaries is how directors will often take kind of a subjective standpoint and kind of, you know, trying to tell their own story. So in King of Kong, how does he approach these characters in the film?
He is making fun of them. Yeah, the movie finds a lot of humor in these guys who have very strange, nostalgia-driven, obsessed lives. And then Gordon enters the story through Wiebe's perspective as an outsider. And so, of course, there is some subjective dealings with this whole underground world.
Okay. King of Kong, Fistful of Quarters. When does it expire? Do I have to rush out and watch it right away?
It expires February 28th, so you have some time to watch it, and I really recommend you do. It's a great underdog story driven by nostalgia and triumph. And for the people who don't really like documentaries, this might be a good one to get their feet wet.
Okay. And for people who really do like documentaries, are looking for something that, you know, has a bit of an exploration into the deep, profound nature of mankind, you might enjoy what I have to recommend in What the Bleep Is This? We Live in Public tells the story of Josh Harris, a former internet entrepreneur and dot-com millionaire whose social online experiments destroyed him financially, relationally, emotionally, and mentally. Ondi Timoner directs this grand jury prize-winning documentary, which follows the rise and fall of a true pioneer and brilliant visionary who predicted and preempted the consequences of social media sites such as Facebook and MySpace a full decade before they even existed.
But one day we're all going to wake up and realize that we're just servants. It's captured us.
Alex.
Yes?
Tell me a little bit, if you could, about Josh Harris.
I can't.
You can't. That's because nobody knows who he is.
Oh.
Josh Harris started a website called pseudo.com back in 1993, which very much pioneered the idea of live audio and video chats, chat rooms, avatars to go with your chat rooms when you're talking to people. Everything that is nowadays is commonplace on websites and social media sites, he kind of invented back in 1993.
Wow.
Pseudo.com made him millions of dollars, but back when the dot-com bubble burst in 2000 and everybody who had put money into internet stock kind of lost it all, he lost it all as well and kind of went from king of the world to servant of king of the world in a way.
Ah, so, you know, this guy that invents all this revolutionary tech and ideas and then loses it all, what happened to him from there?
Even though pseudo-tanked, he still had this reputation of being this social pioneer. So what he did was develop this human experiment called Quiet, We Live in Public, in which he and 100 volunteers lived underground in New York City in this little human terrarium. And the idea behind it was that no matter what they were doing, whether they were sleeping, whether they were eating, whether they were going to the bathroom, whether they were showering, all their activities would be on camera 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it was just kind of this weird experiment that kind of asked the questions of, what do we do when we're under constant surveillance, and how does our behavior change, and just what kind of environment does that spawn?
It was just a crazy and somewhat dangerous scene because you knew that someone was going to flip out.
Yeah, it's almost reality TV before there was reality TV, and it also reminds me of The Truman Show.
Yeah, and Josh Harris has actually said that The Truman Show was an inspiration for him, as well as these Big Brother Orwellian type of establishments. So after Quiet was shut down on January 1st, 2000, because of fire hazard, actually.
Okay.
He started another experiment called WeLiveInPublic.com, in which he and his girlfriend lived once again under constant surveillance 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, where, think about that, eating, sleeping, having sex is always on camera for anybody to watch, to openly criticize, to jeer, to do whatever they want with.
So I understand kind of the story of who this guy is now and what he did. What is this movie?
I think We Live in Public is great for two reasons. One, it's a very intimate portrait of an internet prophet almost, who foresaw how things were going to go, capitalized on them, became rich, fell, and now 10 years later, nobody even knows who he is. I mean, it's got that bittersweet kind of feel to it.
Okay.
On the other hand, I think it's a great commentary not only on the internet and the kind of environment that these social media sites proliferate, but also that idea of is the internet actually bad, or does it just bring something out of people that was always kind of latent to begin with?
Wow. And the movie went to Sundance.
And to anybody who may be interested in the Sundance Film Festival, stick around for your consideration, because we'll be talking a little bit more about it. For the last 5 days, public transportation in Park City, Utah has been jam-packed shoulder to shoulder with anxious groups of skiers, snowboarders, and festival goers, all of whom can't stand each other for taking up valuable space in the buses that they feel are all meant for them. Why, you ask?
Why, Jim?
Because we are smack dab in the middle of the 2011 Sundance Film Festival. And because we, like you, are currently not frolicking through the snow-capped mountains of Park City, Utah, we decided to bring the film festival experience to your computers by dedicating for your consideration to some of our favorite Sundance titles.
Yay! Directed by Jonathan Levine, The Whackness is a coming-of-age dramedy set in New York City, 1994. Josh Peck plays a high school grad who spends his last summer before college selling marijuana and striking up an unlikely friendship with his therapist, Ben Kingsley, while also romancing Kingsley's stepdaughter, Olivia Thirlby.
You sell ISIS?
That's my cover.
Jim, The Whackness is part of this modern Sundance tradition of hip coming-of-age dramas starring young existential men, seen before in titles such as Garden State and 500 Days of Summer.
And House Party. Few people know that Kid and Play actually got their cinematic beginnings at Sundance.
Ah, yes.
Alex, I'd like to think of us as the Kid and Play of web-based video series.
It's a little bit meaner and a little bit more philosophical, and I think that thinking types will really appreciate this film on a deeper level than those other movies.
Right, and there's a level of pop sensibilities and nostalgia to this film as well, because it's almost like a timepiece in how it kind of perfectly captures the zeitgeist of this 1990s era that many of us were teenagers and remember very fondly, especially because of the great soundtrack that's, prevalent in the film.
Yeah, it has a great soundtrack. The music is early 90s hip-hop, and it is perfectly chosen and informing about the setting, the characters, what kind of music the characters was listened to, what kind of music was around them, what the music was from this location. All of it was born in New York, and it gives it this nostalgic, gritty, retro feel that is so important to the characters in the story.
My life sucks.
Has this got something to do with Kurt Cobain?
So Alex, not to say that all I watch is Nickelodeon shows, but let's say theoretically I did. I'd be a little bit confused seeing Josh Peck, a Nickelodeon alumni, very much off-cast in this film. Yeah,
it was a really interesting casting choice. Josh Peck, of course, played one of the two leads on Drake and Josh. Here, he is so dialed back, you wouldn't even know it was the same guy. And then, of course, you have Ben Kingsley, who's just amazing, unbelievable, and he just takes this script and makes it sing.
Right, and it's really great when a director's work can really speak for itself, like Jonathan Levine in The Whackness, because you just know who these actors are, but he's coaxing performances out of them that you wouldn't necessarily expect, which also has a lot in common with the film that I'm going to recommend, Ballast. One man's suicide directly affects the lives of 3 others. In this, the feature film directorial debut of Lance Hammer, which won both the Directing and Cinematography Awards at the 2008 Sundance Film Festival. Populated entirely by non-professional and first-time actors, Ballast is a deliberate, emotional character study that explores how the loss of one man trickles down to impact those who no longer have someone else to rely on for many of their basic needs.
Lawrence, I'm sorry to bother you, but people's been worried about you. Are you okay?
Alex, some of our more sharper-minded viewers may recall that I've referenced Ballast before in regards to our discussion of Winter's Bone.
Oh yes, that's right.
Another Sundance title, both of which are cut from the same cloth in the sense that they depict on camera a slice of American life and topography and geography and sociality that is not often depicted on film. Ballast takes place in the Mississippi River Delta, an area that is not really glorious, so you wouldn't really want to explore there, but yet has its own kind of stories and its own kind of little nuances and beauties going on at the same time.
And in many ways, it's the opposite of the Whackness, where the Whackness used culture and music to infuse its story. Ballast doesn't have any soundtrack or music.
You're absolutely right. A very curious decision, but I think an effective one nonetheless, and that says a lot about Lance Hammer as a director, because in Ballast, like you said, he chose to completely forego any soundtrack whatsoever. There's no diegetic music, there's no non-diegetic music, because he didn't want the audience emotionally manipulated by any type of soundtrack whatsoever.
And it's amazing, without professional actors and music, the tone and ambiance of this film is very clear.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think that has a lot to do with the cinematography of Lowell Crawley. Lowell shot the Mississippi River Delta at all times of day, sun up, sun down, at night, in the morning, in the afternoon. And Hammer has said that his inspiration and his guide for how he wanted to shoot the film was a Portuguese word, saudade. And while saudade doesn't have a specific English translation, it roughly kind of translates to coldness and beauty at the same time, which if you think about real life, I mean, that's pretty much how it is. It's just this fine balance between these two polar opposite moods, which I think is wonderfully expressed in Ballast.
Jim, I didn't know that you were an expert in Portuguese.
Oui, monsieur.
I think that's French.
Alex, it doesn't really matter what language I may or may not be speaking. What matters right now is that we've reached the end of the show. But we want to thank you guys for joining us once again. And whenever you're curious, you can always reach us by email, by Facebook, by Twitter, or on our website, whatchageneq.com. And just remember, until next week, guys, Goonies never say die.